just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Today I am joined by documentary maker Daniel Wing, who is still trying to find out who murdered his mother 30 years on. He's also created a documentary called Who Murdered You, Mum? Daniel, can you just tell us the story of what happened to your mother, what you know?
So when I was 1 year old in 1992, my mum Tina was murdered. My dad went on trial for it and was acquitted. And the case went unsolved and has been unsolved for 32 years. My nan, who raised me, amazing woman, passed away sadly 2 years ago, and that kind of sent me on a quest for answers.
So your documentary then, what are you hoping to achieve with it?
I am fighting for justice for my mum. I have had a meeting with the police and they are looking to see what they have and are looking to reopen investigation if they can find new and compelling evidence. What's interesting now is speaking to other families who are actually going through the trauma and experience of murder.
Yeah.
My mum didn't get the opportunity to be a mum. What would my life have been? I'm now 33 years old with no parents. And it's that kind of thing. It's a very, I guess, lonely journey in what I'm experiencing. That's why I wanted to make this film, because I hadn't had the opportunity to be able to grieve my mother and know who she was. And that was really what this journey was about. It was about finding out who she was and being able to grieve. Everyone had the opportunity, although terrible circumstances, to be able to go to the funeral and have that moment, and I never had that opportunity.
The People's Channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Ben Leo. Tonight,
I know how certain things might sound if they're not said properly.
Yes.
So I never have gaffes.
the Chemi reform row isn't about membership numbers, it's about the country's dire need for decent opposition.
I'm afraid to say the right honourable gentleman doesn't understand aspiration. He doesn't understand opportunity.
Was Liz Truss right after all? So Keir Starmer goes to 10 regulators in the UK, including the Environment Agency, asking them for ideas on how to improve the economy. Also tonight. Shirking from home. Can you guess which government agency is set to strike over so-called Victorian demands to spend 3 days in the office? Elsewhere, Sadiq Khan gets the Labour memo and launches a fresh offensive on British farmers by banning anti-inheritance tax adverts on the London Underground. Tonight's panel are ready to go. I'm joined by the comedian Aideen McQueen, academic and political commentator Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and communications advisor Linda Doobally. And this is going to be awkward. Donald Trump is given a second state visit to the United Kingdom. Can you guess who he's going to be sat next to at dinner?
Have described him as, and I quote, a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath.
You're going to struggle to find any politician who has not had things to say about Donald Trump.
Very good evening to you. Hope you're well. The Kemi Badenoch reform row is much deeper than just membership numbers. First, your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening from the newsroom. The top story tonight. Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has apologised to Azerbaijan for a Christmas Day plane crash that killed, sadly, 38 people. But he stopped short of admitting that Russia was to blame. The aircraft, reportedly hit by shrapnel from Russian air defence systems, crash-landed in Kazakhstan after being forced to divert from Chechnya. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has also accused Moscow of spreading disinformation, saying the damage did resemble a missile strike. US officials have also said Russia is responsible, while Azerbaijan believes the crash was caused by external interference. Investigations are now underway, with various teams examining the crash site. Nigel Farage says that Elon Musk is an absolute hero to young voters and claims he'll help Reform UK to win them over. In an interview with The Telegraph, the Reform UK leader hinted that Mr Musk could make a reasonable-sized donation, insisting it would be legal and above board. It comes as Farage has demanded an apology from Kemi Badenoch after she accused Reform of faking membership numbers. The Tory leader says Reform's online tally overtaking registered Tory members, she says, smells of fakery. Farage, though, has denied those claims, calling them baseless. Heavy fog has continued to cause delays and cancellations at some of the UK's busiest airports today. The majority of flights at Gatwick and Stansted were affected this afternoon, and delays are predicted late into tonight. A number of other delays were also reported at Manchester and Birmingham airports, with dozens of flights delayed at Heathrow. Well, the knock-on effects from Friday's delays also meant planes and pilots were out of position today, leaving some passengers stranded. Earlier, independent travel correspondent Simon Calder told us people need to check before they travel.
We saw over 150 cancellations yesterday, 48 from Gatwick to and from Gatwick, 42 at London City Airport, 40 at London Heathrow, plus some at Manchester, Luton and other airports. And on top of that, I'm afraid Saturday hasn't begun brilliantly. British Airways has cancelled 18 flights so far to and from Heathrow, another 4 at Gatwick, and there's cancellations also at London City. So if you are flying today, good luck.
Simon Calder there speaking to us earlier. Well, boost growth or get out of the way. That is the message from Sir Keir Starmer to UK regulators. The Prime Minister, the Chancellor and Business Secretary have all asked watchdogs, including Ofgem and Ofwat, to propose pro-growth reforms by mid-January. It follows figures that show the UK economy flatlined between July and September. Labour, though, says it is pulling every lever to deliver the highest sustained economic growth in the G7. The Conservatives blame the government's policies for stalling progress. GB News can reveal today that 1,300 migrants have now crossed the English Channel since Christmas Day, as hundreds more crossed today. It comes as the Home Office confirmed 305 people arrived yesterday in 5 small boats. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has blamed Sir Keir Starmer for scrapping Conservative measures like the Rwanda plan, saying that Labour's approach is an insult to the British people. The Prime Minister, though, has promised to smash the gangs, but that comes as more than 22,000 people have so far arrived since he took office, up 25% on last year. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, very good evening. Thank you for your company. We all know the story by now, don't we? Reform say they've overtaken the Tories for paying members, while Kemi Badenoch accused Nigel Farage of rigging the figures for which he wants an apology for. It appears an apology is indeed due after Sky News, The Spectator, The Daily Telegraph and Financial Times all independently verified Reform's data yesterday to suggest Badenoch was indeed wide of the mark with her accusations. And just for the record, I'll say it now, we have repeatedly invited Mrs Badenoch on this channel, any show, any presenter, to give her side of the story, or indeed any shadow cabinet minister or Tory MP. So far, we've been met with stonewall silence, but regardless, this Christmas tale is no longer a row, I think, over membership numbers, which probably actually don't mean all that much anyway. It's much deeper than that. What's going on here is the need for proper political opposition to Labour, while, in my opinion, they run riot with their crippling socialist agenda. Even today, it was revealed Keir Starmer has embarrassingly ordered regulators such as Ofgem and Ofwat to cough up their own ideas for reform that could boost economic growth. Quite frankly, the government doesn't know what it's doing, and I'll touch more on that at 10 o'clock, which is why the country needs serious operators leading the fights from the opposition benches. Kemi's apparently rash tweet about Reform's membership numbers is the latest gaffe from a woman who prides herself on thinking deeply and not making mistakes. Even before she was elected by members to lead the Conservative Party, she was forced to put out the flames of her own fire after calling maternity pay excessive. She later claimed her remarks had been misrepresented. Then she embarrassingly tried to take Keir Starmer to task at PMQs a few weeks ago over, wait for it, immigration.
So let's talk about immigration. He has relaunched yet again. Many new targets, 6 milestones, 5 missions. But why was cutting immigration not a priority?
Speaker, I'm glad she now wants to talk about immigration. Last week she said she didn't, and for good reason. Because the previous government presided over record high levels of immigration. The figures just a few weeks ago, nearly 1 million on net migration. That is unprecedented. A one-nation experiment in open borders under the last government. And she was the champion. She stood up and praised the then Tory Home Secretary for listening to her on removing caps on migration visas. So she was applauding it. Now she's furious about what she was campaigning for. We will drive it down. We will drive down lawful migration. We'll drive down illegal migration.
And now, until she proves otherwise, it appears she's been made to look rather silly with her Boxing Day tirade against Reform and Nigel Farage. As I said, this is from a woman who said this just a few months ago.
I know how certain things might sound if they're not said properly.
Yes.
So I never have gaffes or, apologising for something that I said, oh, that's not what I meant. I never have to clarify because I think very carefully about what I say, make sure that we don't sound shrill, that we don't sound like the bad guy.
Kemi's also taken flak for a lack of direction and ideas on policy. What does the Conservative Party, in her image, stand for? How does she plan to topple Keir Starmer and get the country back on the path to sanity? I don't know, and nobody else does either. She defended that position to the BBC this week, insisting, I do the thinking, and what people are going to get with the new leadership under me is thoughtful conservatism, not knee-jerk analysis. Well, with respect to Kemi, it appears she has, on a few occasions now, engaged her mouth first and brain later. But let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. Comedian Aideen McQueen, academic and political commentator Lisa McKenzie, and the communications advisor Linda Doobity. Good evening to you all. Welcome along.
Good evening.
And,
Hi.
Merry Christmas. Is it still OK?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take that.
I would say ladies first, but I'm not. Linda, should we start with you? You're a comms specialist, a comms advisor. What's going on with Kemi?
Well, I was here 2 nights ago, and what I said at the time was I think she shouldn't have intervened at that point. A, that was bad timing, and B, she did not underpin her comments with evidence. Those are 2 critical mistakes early in the day, and she made both errors really clearly. And I think there would have been no Telegraph Page 1 lead had she just stayed out of the debate.
BBC? The BBC?
Yep, there we are.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. So I think that she needs... I don't think she's going to apologise. I don't think that's in her nature. I think she's, as we know, very hard-nosed. I mean, I think often she is a very good debater. She's an Olympic-level debater on occasion, but she's now making very serious unforced errors, and that is a problem for her. So she needs to pause, and maybe she needs to do some of that thinking that she alleges she does do.
There's always a tweet, isn't there? Always an image or a video.
Always.
There's always a receipt for someone to go back to.
Always. I mean, it's sort of times like this. Well, actually, it's been a long time like this. It's good to be an anarchist because, you can sort of laugh at all of them now, and I am doing lots of laughing at Keir Starmer. I'm sat there with the popcorn, watching them make a mess. I think, as Linda says, it is a comms error. Yeah, that's what's happened. It's a comms error. I don't think she's a terrible politician. Actually, I think that she's got an idea, perhaps, what she wants conservatism to look like under her.
She's conceptual.
Yeah. But what she's done is she's gone for Nigel Farage, who is a comms genius, really. Yeah. And so, that she's just picked the wrong target. She should have gone for Starmer.
So what should she do next? Why? I mean, Linda, you said that she shouldn't apologise.
No. I said she won't apologise.
So I mean, Aideen, how does that look to the electorate? As far as we know, as I said, we've invited Kemi and any other Tories on the channel to prove otherwise. As far as we know now, Kemi has made a mistake with that tweet. Why wouldn't she apologise and just put a line under it?
Well, she's caught, because if she does apologise, she's making it run further, and it's great publicity for Reform. I hadn't a clue about their membership. It's fantastic for them.
Yeah.
And she really shouldn't have said it. It was an error. It was cockiness on her part. I mean, and the fact that she said she never makes mistakes is the biggest mistake you can make.
Yeah.
That's making me feel like if I was going out with her, I would leave her. That's why I left my ex. You know?
Is anyone really watching though now? This is what I suppose. This is what I'm asking. So
watching Kemi?
Yeah, or watching watching any of their sort of party political games, because I've got a feeling that people are watching public services worried about bus fares going up, worried about their everyday living, and I think this sort of level of Twitter political.
But Lisa, that's kind of my point. We need a decent opposition in this country.
Yes, exactly.
To hold the government to account. We saw what happened during COVID when you don't have a decent opposition. Yep. We need somebody on that opposition bench who's got integrity, charisma, will hold Sir Keir Starmer's feet to the fire. Yep. And at the moment, all Kemi seems to be doing, with respect to her, is putting out her own fires.
Do you know anybody who could fit that role?
Yeah, I was wondering.
In the Conservative Party.
Yeah, well... I mean, really on any... I think that's the point. I think that's the point you were making, but it's also a wider point about our politicians that we've got today.
Yeah, it's that people disengage from politicians now. Because they don't trust them, they just disengage, and it is a very big issue.
Yeah, indeed.
Do you think she's a good speaker? I think she has sincere values.
You think she is a good speaker?
Yeah, in general. She is. She's clear, she's a good communicator.
But the issue is, I don't know what she stands for. I don't know what her vision is for the Conservative Party. I don't actually think she's that good a speaker.
Does she need one? Does she need one yet? Because Starmer, let's remember what Starmer did. Starmer sat back for 5 years and never said anything, and actually is probably still not saying much, and just won by default.
Yeah, that's what we were saying earlier, that she should really stand back for 4 years, just like Muhammad Ali.
Exactly.
Just rope-a-dope, and then at the end, boom, 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 give pensioners a bit of money and then make everyone happy, get elected. If I was her, that's what I would do.
Linda, do you reckon she's rattled by Reform?
Yes, absolutely. If you weren't rattled by Reform, you'd have to be totally mad.
Starmer is rattled by Reform as well, actually.
Well, breaking news tonight in the last hour or so, a massive poll published by the Sunday Times tomorrow, 11,000 people quizzed. If there was a general election tonight, Labour would lose 200 seats, Reform would finish on 72 seats, and the Tories would gain, I think, 100 seats. They'd be left with about 178. So that's breaking tonight. They're calling it a mega poll. I know it's too early. They've still got 4 years to go. We're not going to have an election now, but that kind of shows you the public feeling.
It does show you as well that our electoral system is not really representative of what people are thinking.
No, that's true.
Because the way that we've got the two-party system, the third party is never going to win.
I think the key now is that Reform has to underpin itself with some really good structure. It has to really outline its purpose, its broader purpose, really strongly, then its vision, then its focus, then its strategy. And from amongst this membership, it needs to... Nigel Farage knows this. You have to recruit serious people who are prepared to knuckle down.
Well, I guess they would say they have started recruiting serious people. They've got Zia Youssef, who's the Reform chairman now. He made a lot of money in tech and sold his business. He's now organising things. Can I ask you, though, Linda, do you think membership numbers matter?
They do matter. They're not critical, because the Tory membership has been going down for years and years and years. It's probably cut by 2/3 now, right at this point. Yeah. And membership doesn't mean to say, just because you've got high membership, doesn't mean to say you're going to win, and if you've got low membership, you're going to lose. But what it does indicate for Nigel Farage is that there's momentum. That's what it indicates.
I actually went to the Reform conference, believe it or not.
Did you?
Believe it or not.
Did you wear that top? That's Reform colours.
But I was at the Reform conference, believe it or not. The Anarchist I was invited, and I did sort of a little panel conversation there, and I've got to say there was a lot. It was a very happy mood.
As an anarchist, Lisa, is Reform the closest we have to anarchy in this country? They're saying they're not the Uni Party, they're not the Tories, they're not Labour, they're going to do things differently. Are they the closest we've got to anarchy?
Not really.
No?
No, I mean...
What's your vision of anarchy? What does it look like?
People think anarchism is about chaos. It's actually not. It's about order. What do I think?
I'm not even sure you're an anarchist, Lisa.
I am an anarchist. I am an anarchist.
Do you still believe in government?
No, I don't believe in centralised government. It's decentralising power. That's what it's about. I'm not sure Nigel Farage perhaps believes that. But it's about sort of accepting that power corrupts. And therefore, a place like Westminster is full of corruption. Yeah. And as I always say, Westminster... You won't change Westminster. Westminster will change you.
Yeah, that's so true. I think people don't... like, politicians are basically attention seekers. They put themselves out on X Factor for people who have done PPE. Yeah. So they're totally influenced by stuff. They're going to have affairs. They're going to take bribes. They're going to go on these mad junkets. I know I do it. I'm not even a politician.
Fill your boots. Fill your boots.
Yeah.
OK, we're just about to move on, but one-word answer. Is Kemi Bazemore going to be the Tory leader at the next election, yes or no?
No.
Aideen?
I think so. Am I just wrong? I really like her.
Yes or no?
It's not whether you like her or not.
Yes, that's true. I think she will. If she cools her boots, sits back for a while, she has a good chance.
No.
No?
The Tories are ruthless.
Yeah. OK, well, let us know what you think at home. GBNews.com/your say. We move on slightly because if you didn't get everything on your Christmas list this year, maybe you were a bit naughty and Santa decided to give your house a miss. How about £50,000 in tax-free cash? It could be yours. It's our biggest prize giveaway just yet. Here's all the details you need to win.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, best of luck to you. Now, a question for you at home. Is it H or H? Panel, H or H?
Well, it depends what you mean. H.
The pronunciation.
H.
H?
H.
H.
It is, but I'm Irish.
But she's Irish.
Yeah,
I was going to say that.
Lisa?
But in Northern Ireland...
H.
H.
Right, the reason I'm asking is HMRC, I say H, of course, HMRC, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, they reckon those different pronunciations of its name respect diversity. So a language expert will go head-to-head with an etiquette expert on whether we should scrap correct pronunciations for the sake of diversity next. This is Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Maria, potholes, the bane of everybody that uses the road, whether you're a car driver or a cyclist. As a cyclist, are even worse. How have we got into this situation where our roads are in such a bad state?
Well, part of it is to do with actually our climate. In somewhere like, say, Sweden, like the snow will fall on the ground, it will stay there for months. Whereas here we've got what's called a freeze-thaw climate, where the water comes down, then we might have a cold snap and it freezes, and the water within the pothole will then expand and make the pothole bigger. Then we might have a mild spell, and then that process repeats. So, we do actually need extra funding to acknowledge the fact that, we just live in a climate where we're sort of particularly vulnerable to potholes.
Why? I mean, the fact that this happens, these weather conditions happen, is no great surprise to anybody. Why has the problem been ignored for so long?
I think what's happened is we've had short-term funding. So it's like, oh, there's a pothole, let's patch it up. Oh, there's another one, let's patch it up. But the patches aren't actually really that strong, so then they break down again. So, really what we need is to have roads completely resurfaced, and then they'll just be pothole-free for a very long time. And that really is how funding should be. That's the direction funding should go in, as opposed to just sort of dribs and drabs here and there.
Do you think this government are going to be good for the motorist, or is there indeed a war on the motorist still?
The different parties come in and they've all got different policies that they wheel out, then they cancel the policies, and then there's so much lack of transparency. Like, for example, with the pothole issue, sometimes the government, whichever government is in office, will do some big showboating about how they're going to give X amount of potholes, and you still think that sounds really good.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Time now for our head-to-head. And HM Revenue and Customs have said that their name can be pronounced with either an H or a H because it favours diversity. Recent adverts for HMRC have featured actors pronouncing the letter both ways and in different accents. And a spokesman for HMRC said, "We respect diversity, and this extends to our dialect, accent and pronunciation." Do you support this decision? Is it ever correct to say H instead of H, or is it all a load of nonsense? Let me know what you think by heading to gbnews.com/your say, or tweet me while you're there at GBNews and vote in the poll too. I'll bring you the results very shortly. Joining me now on this is Dr. Alex Baratta, a language, linguistics and communications expert, and etiquette expert Diana Mather. Good evening to you both. Diana, H or H?
Well, I say H because that is the received pronunciation. But really, I think this is a load of nonsense. Diversity, just because you say H or H, I just think it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just like saying past or past. It depends where you come from in a lot of circumstances. Okay, they do say that it's the Irish Catholics who have the H and the Protestants who had the H. But I don't think many people actually know that.
I didn't know that, no. Just expand on that, please. Where does that come from?
Well, apparently the Pope, when the Pope taught, the Catholics, priests were taught to say H, which came originally from William the Conqueror, I think, with something like H. But I'm sure Alex will know more about this than I do. But I come from the north of England, where a lot of people say H, and they say blast, and they say past, and I say blast and pass and H. So I think a lot of it is just a dialect thing.
OK, Dr. Alex, what's your thoughts? I mean, I don't know whether H is acceptable. I've always said H. I think that's correct. But is there a difference depending on where you live in the UK or maybe your upbringing?
It could be. I mean, ultimately, the language we use, in this case, the pronunciation, but more broadly, language in terms of vocabulary, grammar, and such, it is based on all kinds of things, such as where you're from, class, race, ethnicity. It's a symbol for all kinds of identities. And, to address the question, which is correct, they're both correct, because at the end of the day, once a given linguistic feature, here a pronunciation, is used systematically, predictably across a wide, region, however defined, by a large number of people, however defined, society dictates language change and evolution, not textbooks, not the OED, not governments. So society's decided H is correct, but so is H. So I don't think there's a diversity on that. I think it's just simply recognizing the linguistic reality. That's the linguistic reality. The societal reality might be knee-jerk reactions about common or thick, or I'm just playing devil's advocate, or what is correct, what is incorrect. But linguistically... But
have we got more important things to talk about, actually, than whether it's a H or an H? I mean, does that really matter?
Well, it's a 2-hour show, so there's plenty in store if you want to stick around. Dr. Alex, can I just ask you one more question? Lots of our viewers now on our Your Say facility are saying H is spelt A-I-T-C-H. There's no H at the start. So why would you stick a H in there at the top?
It might be due to hypercorrection, this fear of H dropping. So you start to add H's where they're not otherwise required. I'm just guessing. I could be wrong. But sometimes that could be the result of you're overdoing it. You're over applying a rule, which doesn't have to be. Like my daughter was 9. She said, I catched a cold.
And Diana, you're an etiquette expert. Is it ever appropriate to pick someone up on their language? For example, if you hear them say H and you want to correct them because you think it's not right, is it the done thing to do so? And if so, how do you do it? Can you give us some tips?
No, it isn't. You let it go because it's their way of speaking. If somebody comes to me, which they do quite often, and they want to speak what is known as received English, then I would say it is not H, it's H. That is the way, the standard way of saying it. But if somebody says H and I don't say anything, that would be extreme bad manners. And as an etiquette expert, there's no way I would do that.
OK. Dr. Alex, last word to you, if you don't mind. This HMRC is saying this is done in the name of diversity and making everybody feel included. I mean, do we really need that? Can they not focus on something more important, such as, I don't know, unblocking their phone lines and picking up the phone for once to people who want to submit their self-assessment or something?
I would say so, yeah. I'm sure a lot of people are probably saying the same thing, to be fair. But at the same time, the need to recognize diversity and equality is certainly a societal push. And frankly, maybe I'm biased as a linguist, but I think language gets overlooked. We forget that language is a symbol, as I said, of the things we do think about, like class and all other kinds of identities. So I think it is important so no one feels left out.
OK. Thank you both. Alex, Diana, thank you very much for your company tonight. Have a lovely evening. OK, coming up, a newspaper front page for tomorrow. The Mail on Sunday has just dropped, and there's a very, very interesting story on the front. I'm not going to reveal too much just at this minute, but stay tuned, and I will tell all in just a few minutes.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland that will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperatures not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north. So some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Now, normally we do the papers in the 10 o'clock hour. They all drop and we get stuck into them and debate the stories. But a front page has just dropped from the Mail on Sunday. I think we have a picture of it. And it involves Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, and GB News. So I've only just cast my eyes on this. Let me read you what I can see so far from the front page. It says, Kemi Badenoch's unprecedented feud with Nigel Farage escalated last night over claims she urged the head of a television station to cut the airtime given to the Reform UK leader. The Tory leader is said to have accused GB News of giving too much of a platform to her critics and raised the spectre of regulatory action. The revelation comes amid the row over Mr Farage's claim that his party has more members than the Tories, which Mrs Badenoch has branded fake. Sources told the Mail on Sunday that the broadcaster's chief executive was called into Westminster before Christmas for a chat with Mrs Badenoch, but during the meeting she made it clear GB News should not be, quote, a haven for my critics. Nigel, of course, has a show on GB News during the weekday. So, yeah, there we go. This is extraordinary to me, panel. If we go back to what happened on Boxing Day with Kemi's tweet, she fired off the tweet. As far as we know now, the tweet was inaccurate until she says otherwise. She said nothing about that. She's posted a few things on Twitter since then about completely different things. In fact, one tweet, ironically, was about honesty and trust in politics, which, you know, is laughable, bearing in mind what happened on Boxing Day. And she's not mentioned it at all. So now we see on the Mail on Sunday, she's putting pressure on GB News or threatening regulatory action to get Nigel Farage off air and saying that this channel shouldn't be a haven for her critics. But Linda, surely this channel should be a haven for everybody's critics and everybody's praise. This is what we do here.
When you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yeah.
I mean, I do not understand why she's done this. Does she not have comms experts to speak to in the party? Because she just needs to pull back right now, and she's doing the exact opposite of what I would advise and many people would advise her to do.
But don't we say this every week about some politician? Every week we sit here and go, what are they doing?
It's incredible.
Do you know what worries me about this, though? I'm genuinely worried about this, is the way that Labour and the way that the Tories now are sort of saying GB News needs further regulation, it needs...
Yeah.
And the way that they will... The two-party state will velociraptor again in order to sort of close down critics. And, like I said, it's a very powerful, the two-party state.
Sorry, Aideen, go on.
I think she's obviously been on the wine. This is the vibe she's giving. It's that in-between time between Christmas and New Year's. It feels like, I thought she was originally the new Margaret Thatcher, but now she's acting like the new Donald Trump. She's a bit out of control. And, of course, if she wants GB News to be more inclusive, she should come on GB News. Isn't that the solution?
Well, yeah, of course. Let me just clarify first. I don't think this meeting in Westminster the other week with our chief executive was to do, of course, with this Boxing Day row, because it didn't happen beforehand. No. I think generally Kemi's concerns are that maybe Nigel has too much of a platform. I guess she's concerned that his profile is raising, Reform is doing too well. But, look, the invitation has extended since Boxing Day to Kemi and anybody from the Tory shadow cabinet, any ministers, any Tory MPs. We have invited them on to talk about this row, particularly with Reform. This is what I told Richard Tice, or said during my chat with Richard Tice, the deputy leader, last night. Oh, we don't have it. Let me know when we get it. Anyway, it was an invitation. It was a public invitation to Kemi to come on the show. Anyone's show. It doesn't have to be me. Doesn't have to be Nigel. Doesn't have to be anyone else. But just come on the channel and give your side of things. If not Kemi, a shadow cabinet minister, anybody, a Tory MP. It was silence yesterday, didn't it?
You see, this doesn't look good. This foot stamping doesn't look good. What you have to do in a situation like this is raise your game. You have to be clear about what you are going to achieve and how you are going to achieve it. And that is what she hasn't been doing. There is a vacuum there over this.
There's a problem as well with, again, I say all the time, there's a problem with this intake of politicians over the last perhaps 10 years that have decided almost to boycott various media outlets. Remember when the Conservative government wouldn't go on the BBC and the Today programme in the morning for years and years. And, you know, and what they're doing is retreating. They're saying, you know what, I don't have to worry about the public. I don't have to worry about, you know, making my argument. You know, I'll be in my team with my people. And I think that's problematic and dangerous for democracy, actually.
OK.
I'm being a bit extreme with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a very good point. I mean, I can't understand how politicians can say, not just from the Conservatives, not just Kemi Badenoch, even Labour types and whoever else, can say, you're a mouthpiece for so-and-so and so-and-so, and yet they won't want to come on the show or anyone's show, have an honest and open debate, because that's what this channel is about. It's about all sides of the debate. We are scrutinised more than any other broadcaster in the UK because so many people want us shut down. We go above and beyond our regulatory commitments and responsibilities to make sure that all sides of the debate appear. This is what I said last night, just for the record. This is my invitation last night to Kemi. For clarity, for viewers at home, I did a show this morning on this channel. We've been inviting Kemi and indeed any other Tory shadow cabinet minister, Tory MP, to come on and talk about this and give their side of the argument. We've emailed CCHQ many times. We've had radio silence. So just for clarity...
What does that tell you? What does that tell you? I think we know what that tells you. They're embarrassed.
Yeah, OK.
They've got nothing to say. They know they're in the wrong.
OK, so, Kemi, if you're watching now, I respect you, of course. I respect all politicians. If you're watching, there's still an hour and 20 minutes left of the show tonight. Get in touch. Call somebody. If you've got a contact at GB News, call somebody. Let's get you on the show and have a chat tonight. It's only fair you have your say. We'd love to have your say. And if you're concerned that there's too much pro-Nigel or pro-reform in this channel, I don't agree with it, respectfully. But, yeah, the only way to combat that is to come on the show, no?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, she'll have to start her own, I don't know, Telegraph TV with maybe John Major's television programme. I don't know.
Yeah, OK. A statement from GB News said the meeting between the GB News boss and Kemi Badenoch took place in Westminster a few weeks back without any acrimony and was very constructive. Should we talk about something else? Transport for London are facing a backlash because Sadiq Khan has banned a farmers' anti-inheritance tax advert on the London Underground. So the National Farmers Union was set to spend around 40 grand on posters all around Westminster Station with the slogan, "Stop the Family Farm Tax." But Sadiq Khan's TfL have stepped in, Linda, and said, absolutely no way, they've banned it.
I don't understand this because I could have sworn several weeks ago there was a real hoo-ha about assisted dying adverts going on the London Underground. They were deeply insensitive and unpleasant. They were pro-assisted dying, and yet they all went up.
Yeah.
So if they were allowed to go up, what's the problem here with these adverts? There's no problem with them. Farmers have got a point of view. They've spent £40,000 and the adverts should be going up. Simple. End of.
And, Aideen, I remember some years back there was an advert for a protein shake.
Yeah.
Where we had some women who were in bikinis or whatever, you know, they're in shape, they're fit, and it said the slogan was "Beach Body Ready."
That's it. I remember.
No, not allowed that on the Underground.
Yeah, it seems really extreme, and I mean, I don't agree with the advertisements, but I do think that they should be allowed to advertise it. They're not advertising anything hateful, are they? It's nothing ridiculous. What I remember the advertisement of the Underground that said "unwanted staring is now a hate crime," and I was like so paranoid because I'm always accidentally staring at people.
Well,
you know?
I'm going to be looking this way.
I've gone to the age now where it's wanted staring.
Yeah. When I lived in London, we used to make our own ads for the Underground.
No way.
To sort
Lisa.
and then we used to put them up, you know, inside the tube train, so we knew the dimensions, so we'd get them printed. And we did quite a few anti-V&A adverts, and the V&A had to sort of publicly say these adverts have got nothing to do with us.
Oh,
but yeah, so
freedom of speech.
Yeah, we used to do that. That's the best way to do it, actually.
Well, TfL in a statement, so I have to read this. They said this advertising campaign was reviewed against TfL's advertising policy and was found to be not compliant. And Mr. Khan's spokesman said the Mayor has no involvement in approving or deciding which ads run on the TfL network, and TfL's policy reflects legal requirements. So, yeah, I guess they're saying, Linda, it's a political advertisement, not allowed. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, but it isn't, is it? It's actually it's a commentary on an aspect of society as things are at the moment in the UK.
The assisted dying ads were awful. Do you remember those?
No, I'm saying it was terrible.
Arguably, that's political.
Because that's about the bill.
And that was about the dying bill. They actually put those ads in Westminster Station as well as MPs were walking through to vote for that bill.
Yeah, and that's much more shocking.
Yeah, they called it Death Alley, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, that was shocking. The Samaritans actually went and covered them up and put those Samaritans... Yeah.
Do you think this decision from TfL then is political?
Yes, of course it is.
Yeah. Labour, of course, look, TfL are obviously independent. They're a division of government. That they shouldn't be making political decisions. But there is this narrative that Labour's got this war with farmers. We know what happened with the inheritance tax. Do you think this could be political?
Well, this is the farmer situation is so bad for Labour. A lot of people think that he'll have to do some kind of U-turn on this because it's politically a very, very dangerous position for Keir Starmer. So he needs the whole conflict to go away. So any kind of advertising about it, I would think, was a big problem.
It also just doesn't make sense, the inheritance tax rate on farmers. Do you know how much it's making per year for the Treasury?
Yeah, tiny amount.
500 million.
500 million.
It's not worth it.
Pounds. For the political backlash, the risk-reward of that, which makes you wonder, it begs the question, so what is... Oh, excuse me, what's just going on? Time to go home, isn't it? Which makes you wonder, what is the real reason then for the inheritance tax rate? If it's only making £500 million a year, which is enough to fund the NHS for one day, by the way, what is the real reason?
Oh, I think it's that kind of emblematic situation where you're talking about identity politics. You're talking about the Labour Party, not like in the countryside, wanting to ban trail hunting, wanting to do this, wanting to do that, identified with that group of people. So I think they saw the farmers as a soft target, and it's rebounded and hit them in the face now because there is such a hue and cry over this that something needs to be done.
But there's so many, though, since I wrote an article for Spiked a few weeks ago about the way that Starmer is almost creating sort of friends amongst people that he's sort of excluding. So the farmers and the pensioners and and people are actually finding commonality through what Starmer is doing.
He's on one side and they're all on the other.
And actually, if he'd learned from Mrs Thatcher that did that in the 1980s, she made common enemy of certain people who then came together. I mean, it seems that's what Starmer is doing today.
Yeah. OK, great. Thank you, panel. Really appreciate it. We will try and cover that Mail on Sunday story in the next hour when we get more of it. Hopefully the story's uploaded online so we can read it. And indeed, I'll say again to any Conservative shadow cabinet minister, it's serious. Kemi, if you're watching, any shadow cabinet minister, any MP, please get in touch before the show's out at 11 o'clock. We'd love to have you on and discuss this in an honest and open way. The invitation is there and has been for many days now. Right, coming up, is it Victorian to want workers to go into the office 3 days a week? Yes, you heard that right, 3 days a week, because civil servants seem to think so, and they're going on strike to protest new requirements that would force them into the office and cut down on working from home. Can you guess which governmental department is kicking off about this? Civil rights campaigner Jonathan Greatorex joins me next. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
There's a lot of fine weather to come across many of the usual holiday hotspots in southern Europe through the next few days. A different story across the southeast of Europe, though. Here's Storm Elena bringing some heavy rain, strong winds across parts of Greece into Cyprus and into Turkey as well. Elsewhere, though, like I said, lots of dry weather on offer, and with that, lots of sunshine too. So not looking too bad at all if you're heading across many parts of southern Europe through the next couple of days. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
I'm joined with Ryan Mark Parsons, who's a TV personality, a columnist, and he was on The Apprentice a few years back, weren't you? That's where most people would recognise your face from. One of the youngest contenders ever on The Apprentice. How did that work out?
Well, you know what? I never in a million years thought I'd get on the show. I was 18 when I applied. There were about 6 months of auditions. It was intense. You met Lord Sugar's advisors, his lawyers, his business advisors. It was the most intense thing I've ever done. And I just thought, never in a million years am I going to get on the show as a teenager. And I got the call from the exec. And he was like, you're one of the 16 candidates. And it was just like, really? So I took a gap year. I've just finished my A-levels. I was working in Harrods before. And I just came up with this business idea, took it onto the show, and I got fired in the end. I lasted 8 weeks, which wasn't too bad. But
what was the business idea? Educate me.
A concierge, similar to companies like Velocity Black, quintessentially, that work with some of the private banks. It was similar to that. I was inspired by my time in Harrods, working with some of these ultra high net worth clients. So I just wrote a 40-page business plan like we all have to do. But I didn't make it to the interview, so I didn't get to talk about it. But no, it was a great experience, a very tough experience, but unforgettable.
So at a young age, how did that change your life at that age? Because you must have got recognised, starting to be recognised when you're going out and about town.
Yeah, I mean, it happened quite quickly because the adverts start rolling out on BBC One and then the shows go on air. It's once a week on a Wednesday. You're getting about 7 million people tuning in every week.
Yep, yep.
And yeah, it was surreal. It was surreal. And then suddenly you get invitations to things. You're going to premieres, and it was a lot. It was a lot at a young age, and I obviously had no training for any of that. But I just embraced it, and I've had fun with it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News. We're going to be getting stuck into that really extraordinary Mail on Sunday front page out tomorrow. Here it is if you're watching on television. If you're on radio, the headline says, Kemi's fury at TV chiefs favouring Nigel Farage. The story says that Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader, she's urging GB News to cut Nigel Farage's airtime and says the channel gives too much airtime to her critics. Apparently, we're a safe haven for her critics, and she thinks there should be a lot less of it. Again, I say, if you're watching Kemi, any Tories MPs are watching, please get in contact before the show's out. I'd love to have you on, and we can discuss this further. If not, then we'll discuss it with the panel in just a tick. Anyway, we move on, because now civil servants have voted to strike over a new requirement that will see them having to work 3 days a week in the office. Yes, 3 days a week. And a demand in which they've branded Victorian. Government officials at the Land Registry will be holding their strike next month, which has caused fears over delays to house sales. The General Secretary at the Public and Commercial Services Union hit back at the targets to drive staff back to the office. They said if they want a motivated, hard-working workforce, ministers should trust their own employees to have some say over their working conditions, rather than acting like Victorian bosses. It's not too late for management to avoid strike action by ending this dispute now. Joining me is civil rights campaigner Jonathan Greatorex. Jonathan, good evening. Thank you for joining me. Victorian conditions, really, just for having to go into the office 3 days a week? I think most Brits would absolutely scoff at that suggestion.
Yeah, I think I agree entirely. I mean, we really are heading for a sort of winter of discontent here, aren't we, with strikes and things like that. I mean, you know, let's not forget that 4 years ago, we were in lockdowns, and I think most people would have been desperate to get back into the office. I mean, I work in the hospitality sector. I'm actually at work tonight. Without me being here, it wouldn't exist. And I'm sorry to say that, you know, especially hot on the heels of Rachel Reeves' disastrous budget, you know, we're going to see an absolute tsunami of job losses come April. And I think this is very courageous of the union, you know, to threaten strike when quite frankly, I think a lot of people are going to be out of work as a result of this government's policies.
Yeah, are you referring to the employer's national insurance specifically there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly in my industry, it's going to devastate us. It's going to devastate the entire sector, and the government are just not listening. So yeah. I mean, I think we've got to be realistic. I mean, imagine a bin man saying, "I only want to work 3 days a week," and also let's not forget. I mean, the Land Registry is notoriously behind, with its work. I mean, surely if the unions have got any sense, they'll say, "Okay, listen, we'll go in, and if we hit targets, we can maybe have a day off a week or work from home for 1 day a week." I don't agree with it. I'm
Jonathan,
really sorry.
I guess the difference is between, say, a refuse worker, a bin man, and those working at the Land Registry. I assume the guys at the Land Registry are working on computers. They don't really need to be in an office. This would be their argument, I guess. They can do their work from... They could be on a beach in, I don't know, in India somewhere, in Goa, and I'd still do the work.
Yeah, I mean, I had this conversation with my daughter and her boyfriend today. I mean, they both work from home. They say they work far more productively at home, and that's great. And I've seen them work from home. They take it very seriously. Their head down. They really, really get on with it. But we've got the Land Registry that has got a huge backlog of work, and quite frankly, if there is a problem, and clearly there is, I think people need to come into the office, work out what's going wrong, and then take it from there, and then maybe move the work at home. But I certainly don't think it's Victorian at all. I think that's just bizarre.
The Conservatives were going to sack around 60,000 civil service workers until Labour got in, and they reversed it, of course. What do we do with the likes of Land Registry workers who are kicking off and striking about working from home? I mean, do they deserve to be sacked, do you think?
No, I don't think anyone deserves to be sacked unless they do something absolutely horrific.
If they're refusing to come into the office and do their job as they've been ordered to, I mean, what's the option?
The option is that they just don't get paid for the work that they don't do, and that's just common sense. If you didn't turn up for work, or whether you're working remotely or at home, your employers have got a set of guidelines, and you've got to stick to that. The same as my staff have got to come into work, and I'm really sorry, but as I'll come back to what I said earlier about that that disastrous budget with the NI hike. We're going to be seeing people desperate for jobs. And let's not forget that the people in the Land Registry have not missed a single pay packet throughout the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point.
We had to lock down. We were serving drinks in the cold out of the window. We were standing up and sitting down and wearing masks and going one way. And we've done our bit. And so it's time for people to do their bit.
All right, Jonathan, thank you very much for that great insight. You're a civil rights campaigner. Yeah, interesting. I guess the Land Registry would say, we needed to make sure houses were being sold, etc., during the pandemic. We keep things moving. Up next, Labour are all out of ideas. In just 6 months, the PM's ordered more than 10 regulators to give him 5 ideas for delivering economic growth. Back in just a sec.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland that will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperatures not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north. So some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash.
My name is Cliff. And my name is Julie. And we won $25,000. I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The latest Channel 4 Dispatches documentary has revealed details about the royal family's finances, including reports that private royal estates have received millions of pounds of income from public bodies and charities.
Morning, and morning, Stephen. Absolutely, I'm not shocked either. And also, as a former butler, I was also a duchy rentee. I used to rent one of the properties, and we were always aware of the property portfolio. I don't think it's kind of a bit news thing. Obviously, part of the, if you like, the business side is these two duchies, Cornwall and Lancaster, and the late Queen obviously was the Duke as well of Lancaster, and now you've got the Prince was obviously, or the King, when he was Prince, had the duchy. And these properties, portfolios as well, I mean, obviously they make money. I mean, but they've been around for, I think they go back to George III, if not before.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Ben Leo. Tonight,
I'm afraid to say the right honourable gentleman doesn't understand aspiration. He doesn't understand opportunity.
was Liz Truss right after all? Zero growth and out of ideas. Desperate Keir Starmer asked the likes of Ofwat and the Environment Agency for help on how to stimulate the economy. So what happens to this kind of bluster?
I was an economist at the Bank of England for many years. Before I became an MP, I worked in financial services. I know how to run a successful economy.
Yeah, OK. Also tonight, sun and sea, but not for thee. Labour are set to whack Brits with record-breaking flight taxes that will add up to £400 to a family holiday abroad. And breaking tonight, a new mega poll shows Labour would lose nearly 200 seats under a hung parliament if a general election was called today. 7 cabinet members would lose their jobs, including Health Secretary Wes Streeting. The first of tomorrow's Sunday newspapers are minutes away, and my panel are ready to go too. I'm joined by the comedian Aideen McQueen, academic and political commentator Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and the communications advisor Linda Duberly. And this is going to be awkward. Donald Trump is set to become the first elected politician honoured with 2 state visits to the UK. I wonder who he'll sit next to at dinner.
You've described him as, and I quote, a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath.
You're going to struggle to find any politician who has not had things to say about Donald Trump.
Whoops. Plus, we'll bring you more on the Mail on Sunday front page that's coming out tomorrow. It's bombshell as Kemi Badenoch furies at GB News bosses over the Nigel Farage row. "14 years to prepare for government, but Labour are all out of ideas after just 6 months. First, your news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening from the newsroom. The top story tonight. Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin has apologised to Azerbaijan for a Christmas Day plane crash that killed, sadly, 38 people. But he stopped short of admitting that Russia was to blame. The aircraft, reportedly hit by shrapnel from Russian air defence systems, crash-landed in Kazakhstan after being forced to divert from Chechnya. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has also accused Moscow of spreading disinformation, saying the damage did resemble a missile strike. US officials have also said Russia is responsible, while Azerbaijan believes the crash was caused by external interference. Investigations are now underway, with various teams examining the crash site. Nigel Farage says that Elon Musk is an absolute hero to young voters and claims he'll help Reform UK to win them over. In an interview with The Telegraph, the Reform UK leader hinted that Mr Musk could make a reasonable-sized donation, insisting it would be legal and above board. It comes as Farage has demanded an apology from Kemi Badenoch after she accused Reform of faking membership numbers. The Tory leader says Reform's online tally, overtaking registered Tory members, she says smells of fakery. Farage, though, has denied those claims, calling them baseless. Heavy fog has continued to cause delays and cancellations at some of the UK's busiest airports today. The majority of flights at Gatwick and Stansted were affected this afternoon, and delays are predicted late into tonight. A number of other delays were also reported at Manchester and Birmingham airports, with dozens of flights delayed at Heathrow. Well, the knock-on effects from Friday's delays also meant planes and pilots were out of position today, leaving some passengers stranded. Earlier, independent travel correspondent Simon Calder told us people need to check before they travel.
We saw over 150 cancellations yesterday, 48 from Gatwick to and from Gatwick, 42 at London City Airport, 40 at London Heathrow, plus some at Manchester, Luton and other airports. And on top of that, I'm afraid Saturday hasn't begun brilliantly. British Airways has cancelled 18 flights so far to and from Heathrow, another 4 at Gatwick, and there's cancellations also at London City. So if you are flying today, good luck.
Simon Calder there speaking to us earlier. Well, boost growth or get out of the way. That is the message from Sir Keir Starmer to UK regulators. The Prime Minister, the Chancellor and Business Secretary have all asked watchdogs, including Ofgem and Ofwat, to propose pro-growth reforms by mid-January. It follows figures that show the UK economy flatlined between July and September. Labour, though, says it is pulling every lever to deliver the highest sustained economic growth in the G7. The Conservatives blame the government's policies for stalling progress. GB News can reveal today that 1,300 migrants have now crossed the English Channel since Christmas Day, as hundreds more crossed today. It comes as the Home Office confirmed 305 people arrived yesterday in 5 small boats. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has blamed Sir Keir Starmer for scrapping Conservative measures like the Rwanda plan, saying that Labour's approach is an insult to the British people. The Prime Minister, though, has promised to smash the gangs, but that comes as more than 22,000 people have so far arrived since he took office, up 25% on last year. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Things have taken a desperate and embarrassing turn at the heart of government. Devoid of ideas and inspiration on how to grow the economy, the one thing Labour promised to do if they were elected to power, it's been revealed today that Sir Keir Starmer has ordered more than 10 regulators, including Ofgem, Ofwat and the Environment Agency, to give him 5 ideas for delivering economic growth by January the 16th. This, of course, comes off the back of their dismal first 6 months in power. Labour have delivered 0 growth, plunged business confidence into the gutter and sparked warnings of recession. So how's that happened when their entire shtick has been about dragging Britain out of its economic doom loop?
Because we're determined to lead the way on growth, determined to get Britain building, determined to get our economy moving through the shock and awe of investment. That's the message to take home today.
The Chancellor also said the word growth 39 times in her October budget and never failed to remind us that, apparently, she was an economist at the Bank of England.
I was an economist at the Bank of England for many years. Before I became an MP, I worked in financial services. I know how to run a successful economy. I just want the chance to be able to do that and turn this economy around so that it actually works for working people in our country again.
Interesting. Let's not forget this government inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7 when they took power. So why now is Sir Keir Starmer scrambling to regulators to do his job for him? I'm beginning to wonder if Liz Truss was right after all. The former PM sat down with the Wall Street Journal for a documentary into her short 44-day tenure recently.
In my opinion, our economy is stagnating because taxes are too high, the government's too big, there's too much regulation, it's expensive to build anything, it's expensive to get energy, it's not surprising, it's uncompetitive to run a business.
I'm afraid to say the right honourable gentleman doesn't understand aspiration, he doesn't understand opportunity, he doesn't understand that people want to keep more of their own money.
Liz Truss clearly made political mistakes, as she herself has acknowledged. Are those mistakes sufficient to explain her precipitous downfall? Or was she, in part, done in by the blob?
Just to say, Liz Truss was ousted as Prime Minister when 10-year gilt yields, bonds issued by government, hit 4.1% after her mini-budget in 2022. Gilts this week surged above 4.5%. That means borrowing is now much more expensive. Where's the media outrage? Where's the OBR, the Bank of England and the economic blob demanding an urgent change in direction? Labour have had 14 years to prepare for government and, quite frankly, they're all out of ideas in just 6 months. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. The comedian Aideen McQueen, academic and political commentator Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and the communications advisor Linda Jubilee. Welcome back, ladies. Thank you for your company. Who should we start with? Lisa, let's start with you. What's your thoughts? Labour, they promised growth. That was their whole shtick, and as far as we can see, it's not happening. They failed.
Well, I'm still trying to get over Keir Starmer saying he's going to do something with shock and awe. He's going to shock and awe with the economic growth.
Well, he's done some shock and awe, but maybe not the stuff he was imagining.
I think he's done lots of shock. I don't think he's done any awe. And you know, and also, you know, the Rachel Reeves sort of shtick, you know, that she once answered phones somewhere. But I shouldn't say that. But
that is thank you.
Well, say what you think. No, I know it is. And then now I'm also trying to put together him asking, or the government asking, off what? The you know, the regulatory force of the water that's actually poisoned our water and sort of they find these companies £1.
So their reasoning for this is, I think it's quite extraordinary, to be honest. I think, as I said, I think it proves they're out of ideas. But their reasoning is that they're asking these regulators for ideas that they think, basically red tape that they can cut to ensure that growth is sped up. But I mean, you're going to the Environment Agency for tips.
I know.
I mean, it just seems balmy.
Is this not like posh focus group or something? You know, they've I don't know if you've ever seen In the Thick of It, where they're where they're doing the focus groups all the time. You know, what shall we say tomorrow?
Yeah,
Let's get a
that's exactly what it's like.
Is that what they're doing? It's like a posh.
And also, have you noticed we're back to the numerical situation here, where there are 5 things he wants to achieve? That's moved on from the 7 things and the 3 things and the 5 things. And it's almost like they've got a very sort of rudimentary communications playbook, which says you always have to have 3 points. You always have to have odd numbers.
Ed Miliband started it all with his infamous Ed Stone, didn't he, when he was the top job. Aideen, look, in Labour's defence, if I can give them one, is that they say that there's a £22 billion black hole. They need to make these decisions. They weren't aware of it when they came into power. And, you know, they are trying to secure growth.
Well, I think, OK, fair enough if you want to discuss things with these companies. But again, there's too much regulation. You know, asking the regulators how we're going to improve things is like when my parents went to a priest for marriage counselling. Like, it doesn't make any sense. They're going to be too conservative.
That is a very novel view.
You know, I mean, I believe in less and less and less red tape. And this is the red tape factory. And he's going to the red tape factory saying, how can we cut down on red tape?
I wish it was the red tape. I mean, of what? I am astonished what they've allowed to happen with our water.
I didn't know the water was so bad. I'm going away.
Yeah, I mean, our water is so bad that the surfers don't want to get in it. You know,
and the rowers can't get in. They're warned about falling in the water in case they swallow any.
The cold swimmers can't get in.
I mean, things fell apart in terms of the water quality and in our seas and waters under the Tories, of course.
Yes.
So how long do we give Labour? It is only 5 or 6 months into their tenure. They've got a 4 or 5 year term. How long do we give them? Because compared to 14 years of Tory rule, they've been in for 5 minutes.
I'm not going to let them off with that because they were sat there for 14 years. Doing what? Why didn't they talk to these regulators 5 years ago? Why didn't they go? Do you know what? Let's sort of put some feelers out. Why didn't they do that?
I mean, what are you in opposition for?
Yeah.
Why are you His Majesty's shadow government? It is because you are supposed to be amassing information that you intend using should you be lucky enough to win power.
What they've been doing for that 14 years...
clearing out their own house.
Yeah, they were falling out with each other, trying to get Jeremy Corbyn in, then trying to get him out, and then trying to get him back in again. And they've spent 14 years on one man.
And that's why that story. Did you see?
Like me and my ex.
You keep talking about your ex. You miss him.
Nobody here misses Jeremy Corbyn.
That's why. I guess there's links to the story doing the rounds yesterday, where Labour have opened more quangos. I mean, I think it's a new quango every week. You've got the border security mind. You've got a department to analyse this, a defence spending review for that. They just seem to be doing reviews and opening bodies and spending money on things and not actually doing anything, Linda.
I mean, you had to understand, they should have understood that in this particular situation, it was a historic situation, they had to hit the ground running and they should have been well prepared for what they have to do.
Can I ask you about Liz Truss? What's your thoughts on Liz Truss?
I think that in general terms, very general terms, she had a good point to make. But she didn't drill down and she didn't do enough research and she should have run it past people before she did the budget. But actually, if you look at it, some of the principles of what she said were correct.
Has she been vindicated?
No.
No, I think she just ran with it too much and then not enough. She didn't do a Javier Milei on it. No. And that would have been exciting. But she did a kind of a weird, passive-aggressive, slightly more female version of that, where she was like, oh, do you mind if I just do that now?
And there's this new Wall Street Journal documentary on Truss that's just come out. We've actually got the documentary maker on this show tomorrow to talk about it. But I watched it earlier, and in it, Kwasi Kwarteng was in it and talking about the infamous 44 days. And Kwasi was saying, look, Liz, she bowed down to the blob or to her critics too easily. She sacked Kwarteng, got Jeremy Hunt in. Then he was saying she could have stayed on for a year. She wasn't obliged to step down. She could have played chicken with the markets. And she's, of course, accusing the markets and Andrew Bailey and the Bank of England of stitching her up. That's what the whole documentary is about.
But the Tory party at that time were in chaos, though, weren't they?
No.
That was the problem. It wasn't so much Liz Truss. It was the party in itself. It was in chaos. It didn't know what it wanted. It didn't know where it wanted. So what it was doing, it was reactive. Yeah. It was reacting. It wasn't thinking. And I think this is what Starmer is doing as well. And that's why people out in the public are very critical of it.
It's not just Starmer. It's the Conservative Party that has behaved in a similar way. Certainly over the past, 8, 9 years, have been in total chaos with their internecine fighting. It's really hit Conservative voters hard. Yeah, we can see that.
I think the public is sick of it. And again, sorry to... let's talk about reform again. Oh, we're a reform mouthpiece, aren't we? That's Reform's point. That's Reform's point, that the Labour and the Tories are the uni party, and that's Reform's shtick.
And Reform are going right through with that. They're cutting through that with, like, butter, actually. Yeah. They're getting that point across and it's hitting. And the other two parties don't know what to do now with Nigel Farage. They don't know what to do with Reform. And I think it's throwing chaos in. And as an anarchist, I did tell you earlier it wasn't about chaos, but I am enjoying the chaos of this. I'm enjoying, actually, Nigel Farage throwing these two parties into chaos. They deserve it, actually, for being incompetent.
Aideen, have Labour failed, is my question, because they inherited the fastest-growing economy in the G7. I think it was 0.7% growth in the first 6 months of the year, better than anywhere in Europe and probably the world, and now we have zero growth from the guys who are banging on about everything only that.
So, I mean, give them a bit of a chance. It doesn't seem like they're doing well at all. And it's interesting how Reform, who actually only have 5 seats, actually Reform have less seats than Sinn Féin, would you believe?
Yeah.
So it's amazing how they're making such a stir and they're able to create so much of a stir. But, I mean, who knows? We'll have to see.
Yeah. OK, interesting. And there is that new mega poll out. We'll get stuck into that in just a second. A new poll out in the Sunday Times tomorrow showing if there was an election today, Labour would lose 200 seats, the Tories would gain something like 150 and Reform would finish, they'd go from 5 to 72. That's if an election was called today. Of course, I mean, some people are saying it's absolute rubbish because there won't be an election today, so it doesn't matter. But interesting nonetheless. Now, we move on. If you didn't get everything on your Christmas present list this year, how about £50,000 in tax-free cash? It's our biggest prize today, and it could be yours. Here's all the details you need to win.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
OK, best of luck to you on that. Coming up, Donald Trump could make history by becoming the first ever elected president to receive a second state visit to the UK, hosted by our royal family. I wonder if Sadiq Khan's still got that massive blimp in his garage that he can inflate. Plus, we'll bring you more on the Mail on Sunday front page. Here it is on screen now, as Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, rages at GB News bosses over favouring, apparently, in her words, Nigel Farage amid online rows with Reform UK and, the Tory party and the membership. This goes back a few weeks, actually. It's not in direct response to this Boxing Day row. It's about her accusations that there are too many critics of Kemi on GB News. I must say, though, Kemi has been on GB News a few times. She sat down with Chopper. I've invited her on. Kemi, if you're watching again, there's still 40 minutes left. Give us a call. I'd love to have you on tonight. Anyway, that's coming up. Back in just a tick. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Penelope's, which is situated in the sophisticated Hotel Armano in Covent Garden, delivers punchy dishes from the executive chef Fez Ozalgan. London-born, she's of Turkish Cypriot heritage, and at the tender age of 16, she enrolled at catering college. So, lovely to see you, Fez. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So you're now in a very prestigious position. I'm always impressed that in the world of chefing, it's possible to get to very senior positions quite young, if you're good enough. Talent is rewarded, is it not?
Definitely, yeah. It does take a lot of hard work, for sure. But, yes.
When did you know that you wanted to be a chef?
Honestly, because my parents have a cafe in Barking. And I used to go there when I was younger, in school holidays and weekends to help them. And actually, I'll be honest, I just used to really admire everyone calling my dad chef, and that's what I wanted.
And what about your food inspirations? Because I believe the food that you produce now is what? Mediterranean influenced and also to some extent Middle East influenced?
Yeah, and Spanish as well at Penelope's, yeah. So our concept at Penelope's, our CEO, Ariel, he is Israeli, but he grew up in Marbella. So,
These are the great influences.
Yeah.
What have you brought here today?
OK, so we have our sea bream tartare, which is a really good inspiration of both Spanish and Israeli. It's marinated with harissa, and it's served with a really nice gazpacho sauce, caviar on top.
I wonder whether the camera can see that. It is the most gorgeous coloured sauce on top of my sea bream tartare. That's marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight. Now, Donald Trump could make history by becoming the first ever elected president to receive a second state visit to the UK, hosted by our very own royal family. Mr. Trump's last state visit, of course, was back in 2019, hosted by our late Queen. There's the pictures on your screen now, if you're watching on television. The incoming president loved the trip so much that he got a photo album made of the visit. And Downing Street now, apparently, is preparing an invitation for his second visit once the president-elect returns to the White House. His inauguration, of course, is in January. This follows a meeting between Trump and Prince William at the opening of the Notre Dame in Paris earlier this month, in which Trump dubbed the prince very handsome. But will Sir Keir Starmer be able to produce the same charm following several of his colleagues previously criticising the 78-year-old billionaire, not least the likes of David Lammy, Angela Rayner, and so on and so on? You know the drill. Joining me now is US political analyst Eric Ham. Good evening, Eric, or good morning where you are stateside. Donald Trump, a second state visit into the UK. He could make history. This is something for you Americans to be proud of.
Oh, and I think Donald Trump would be very proud and would welcome the opportunity. Also, we know, particularly given the fact that there is some frostiness between the incoming president and Keir Starmer, I think this would go a long way in assuaging those relationships between the two nations.
What's the general feeling of Americans towards our royal family? I seem to have maybe a stereotypical view that, you know, they are all about the Queen and the tea and very pomp. I mean, there is an affection from the Americans to our monarchy.
There is, and I think also, too, given a lot of the drama lately, I think Americans, we love drama, and so I think that's something that we're eating up. And I think the fact that a second state visit for Donald Trump, who we know brings the drama in droves, a meeting with the royal family, I think would go a long way. And also, too, I think it would be something that would be seen as showcasing the president on the world stage, and I think is a good look for both nations.
I think he was, I'm not sure if you remember, Eric, but last time he was here with the late Queen, he did get some stick for walking ahead of Her Majesty at the Guards Parade. So maybe he's, I mean, I don't know if he broke royal protocol or not, but maybe, here we are, here's the pictures now. Maybe he's been given some advice on royal etiquette. But he is a massive fan, isn't he, Donald Trump, of the royals, and particularly the late Queen. His mother, of course, was born in Scotland. It's nice, isn't it, that we've got a US president in situ, or soon to be anyway, who loves the UK so much, because it was argued that Joe Biden actually didn't really like the UK very much. He infamously said once that he was Irish.
Well, I think one thing we know about Donald Trump, the incoming president, is that the pomp and the pageantry of the office itself, he really understands, and he gets that, which is something that Joe Biden simply never did. And I think Donald Trump will do very, very well in situations like that. And I think, which is why it's a good thing, because we know Donald Trump will certainly make clear that he will be the only president to have actually gotten this second visit.
Can I ask you, Eric, about stories doing the rounds yesterday? Donald Trump suggesting, maybe he was joking, I don't know, maybe you can give some light on it, but suggesting Canada and Mexico could become the 51st and 52nd states of the United States. Also, the Panama Canal should become the United States Canal. And he was also talking about buying Greenland from Denmark. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is causing tremendous consternation with those countries. Denmark concerned about what's happening with Greenland and Donald Trump's continued push for the island, in addition to the Panama Canal and, of course, Canada. But what we do know is there are things that Donald Trump wants from these particular countries, which is why he is saying the things that he's saying. He wants Canada and Mexico to curb illegal immigration into the United States. We know that he's deeply concerned about China being influential in the Panama Canal, considering that they manage 2 of the 5 canals. And also, we know, given the U.S. military base in Greenland, Donald Trump again recognizes that there is a Russian and Chinese influence in the region as well. And so I think Donald Trump is using all of this talk as cover for negotiations that he expects to have when he's sworn into office.
OK, Eric, and just lastly, whilst I've got you, I may as well ask you this. Apparently there's a war brewing between the MAGA base, Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, who have both been tasked with leading this Department of Government Efficiency in the US. They've been rowing with a lot of MAGA fans, Donald Trump fans on X, on Twitter, about these a particular work visa that prioritises skilled, in this case, skilled Indians they were talking about in the tech sector. Lots of people saying, no, you should be prioritising Americans and not importing Indians from abroad to do your job. Is this a real split in the MAGA base? Is this the first sign of disharmony amongst Trump's administration?
Oh, absolutely. And quite frankly, I was surprised that Ramaswamy actually made these comments considering the MAGA base. And I think this is going to be something that is going to be a brewing simmer. May not explode right now, but it's certainly going to be something that many MAGA are going to be deeply concerned about. And they're going to keep it in the back of their mind. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And if Donald Trump has to actually weigh in to tamp down this imbroglio that we're seeing play out right now.
Yeah, Eric, I've got some concerns. I have to say, I've got a vision in my mind of Musk being booted out of the administration within a year or so, much like Steve Bannon during his first term in 2016. And they were best buddies. Bannon was attributed with making, allowing Trump to win the presidency with his advice, and then all of a sudden he's kicked to the curb. But we'll see. Eric Ham, thank you for joining me now, US political analyst. Funny stuff about Mexico, Canada, Greenland, the Panama Canal. Just as long as Trump doesn't want to make the UK the 51st state of America, that's fine with me. Up next, it's tomorrow's front pages, hot off the press, including this absolutely bombshell front page on the Mail on Sunday. If you've missed the start of this show, this came out a few minutes ago, maybe, 29 minutes ago now. Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, has expressed her fury at GB News bosses over her claims that we favour Nigel Farage, coverage of reform, and give too much airtime, quote-unquote, to her critics. By the way, she's not addressed the situation from Boxing Day, where she said that reform faked their membership numbers. We've had no apology to Nigel Farage, if indeed what she said was untrue. She's not come on this channel or spoken anywhere else about it. But yeah, Kemi, if you're watching, if any shadow cabinet ministers are watching, any Tory MPs, 30 minutes to go, the invitation's still there. Come on, have a chat with us. We'd love to speak with you. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Back in a tick.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland that will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperature's not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further South across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north. So some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Ben Leo tonight only on GB News. The very first newspaper front pages have just dropped. Let's start with the Sunday Telegraph bombshell story. Actually, another good one. Families face 8k New Year tax raid. Another one. Middle classes to be hit by school fees and council levies with threat of further rises. I thought Rachel Reeves was saying no more tax rises. The Observer. Patients at risk as NHS urgent repair costs triple in decade. Backlog bill rises to 2.7 billion in 10 years. The Mail on Sunday, the story we've been talking about, of course, Kemi's fury at TV chiefs favouring Nigel Farage. We will talk about that in just a second. The Daily Star, a chilling exclusive, they say. Rise of killer robot fridges. Boffins fear AI devices are going rogue. Wouldn't surprise me. The Sunday Express, UK's £4 million pledge to find Putin's cruel war criminals. Survivors of Russian war crimes in Ukraine were one step closer in their quest for justice today with the announcement of a new financial boost from Britain. And The Sun on Sunday, apprentice stars in hotel romp. I'm not going to bother with that. Saucy. There we go. Right, should we talk about the Mail on Sunday front page? Because, of course, as we've been talking about in the past half an hour or so, Kemi Badenoch's feud with Nigel Farage has escalated over claims that she urged bosses at GB News on this channel to cut the airtime given to the Reform UK leader. That's according to the front page of the Mail on Sunday, which you can see on your screen now. They claim that during a meeting with one of the channel's chief executives, she said GB News should not be a haven for my critics. That's one of her quotes in the paper tomorrow. GB News should not be a haven for my critics. The bombshell report follows Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage's online row on Boxing Day. That was over Reform UK's membership numbers, of course. Let me play you this clip from last night because there is some narrative and chatter about the fact that, you know, maybe since this Boxing Day row we've been talking about it too much. I will say the BBC covered the row and they wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for Kemi getting involved. They wouldn't have ever reported on Reform's numbers, but it was because of Kemi's tweet that they did so. And so on this channel, we're, of course, going to talk about it as well. I did invite Kemi and any other Tory MP onto the channel last night. Let's, for clarity, take a look at that. For clarity, for viewers at home, I did a show this morning on this channel. We've been inviting Kemi and indeed any other Tory shadow cabinet minister, Tory MP to come on and talk about this and give their side of the argument. We've emailed CCHQ many times. We've had radio silence. So just for clarity...
What does that tell you? What does that tell you? I think we know what that tells you. They're embarrassed.
Yeah, OK.
They've got nothing to say. They know they're in the wrong.
A GB News spokesman said tonight that the meeting took place without any acrimony and was very constructive. And the full story in the Mail on Sunday tomorrow does elaborate on that as well. An ally of Miss Badenoch told the Mail on Sunday, Kemi had a good meeting with GB News, which was mostly about her doing more with the channel. She did ask about the status of programmes fronted by politicians and where GB News stood with the regulator, Ofcom. Kemi wants to ensure any media projects she does meet the highest standards. So, yeah, there we go. The meeting was very friendly, they said. And as the leader of the opposition, she will continue to have such discussions with the media. So, yeah, panel, welcome back. Linda, Aideen, Lisa. Your thoughts on this, Linda?
Yeah, I think Kemi Badenoch should come on air. I mean, she should come on tonight, really, since you've asked her. I don't really understand why she hasn't turned up. And actually, it's not true. It's absolutely not true that people on this channel haven't supported her, because I've been on this programme where earlier on, the previous presenter supported her, got right behind her in quite a long monologue. So it's not true that this is a haven for her critics.
Well, actually, you know, if you just go back, I don't know, 5 months, GB News had Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's Conservative MP, and Lee Anderson, who was then a Conservative MP as well. So what is it that she's asking? Is she saying she wants... Is she saying the same thing to the BBC? Are the BBC filling, you know, their time with people who don't like her? I don't. Well, I guess, what is she saying?
I guess her case is that Nigel Farage has a show on this channel. Lee Anderson has a show every Friday on this channel.
Who is now a Reform,
but was Conservative.
I mean, did they sort of contact you before the election and say there's too many Conservatives?
Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg has a show on this channel, and also we have a former Labour MP, Gloria Di Piero, who has many times appeared on this channel. She does PMQs every Wednesday, most times with Christopher Hope, our political editor. And I just will say this, I mean, first of all, I find it extraordinary that Kemi hasn't even addressed the Boxing Day fiasco with Reform. It spiralled completely out of control. It was, as far as we understand now, because she's not proven otherwise, it was a mistake. It was a gaffe. She's not apologised. She's not mentioned it. The only tweets she's put out since then are tweets about honesty in politics, which is completely ironic. And
evasive.
And evasive, it could be argued. But this channel, I've said it in the last hour, we are under so much more scrutiny than any other channel, any other broadcaster. We go above and beyond our responsibilities to give balance and due impartiality to all debates. That's why, to the annoyance of some viewers, they always feel that there's, for example, too many lefties on, or too much prominence to the lefty argument, or woke this or woke that. You know, we do go above and beyond our responsibilities, and I just think anybody asking for censorship on a channel where we always, without doubt, because we know we'll be crippled otherwise, we give weight to all arguments. I just think it's... I don't think it rings true, personally.
No, and as you've said several times this evening, you've invited her on, and no one from her office has even contacted us.
Well, I mean, her original tweet was unusual. I mean, it was a strange tweet anyway, that she needed to sort of say that you don't have this many members. I mean, it was a very silly... I think you've sort of said it. It was like a post-Christmas Day kind of drink.
She might have had one too many mince pies. Let's just put it that way. I mean, I've been that soldier myself.
But she didn't underpin that tweet with anything.
No, it's just sort of like they haven't got this many. This is it.
Well, she was saying in that tweet, it was a thread on X, she was saying that she's an engineer, her background, her degree is in engineering.
Well, we're tired of hearing that.
Yeah.
But Reform...
Yeah.
They went to The Spectator, The Daily Telegraph, Sky News, and who else? The Financial Times, and those broadcasters and publications independently verified the Reform numbers were true. So, I don't know. I just can't understand why you wouldn't apologise, and now why she's been happy to have this Mail on Sunday front page out.
Or couldn't you produce the evidence that generated your tweet?
She wants to move on, don't she?
Yeah,
That's what she wants to move on now, don't she?
Yeah.
Well, it's quite.
She's still digging, I think.
I respect her and all politicians very much, but I think we need to hear from Kemi, or at least a shadow cabinet member, on this, and just let's draw a line under it, because lots of people are saying Conservatives, Reform, just stop squabbling about online members. Just, you know, Labour are running riot with their socialist agenda all across the UK.
That's what we need to be addressing.
I wouldn't say that Labour are running around.
There you go, there's the balance.
I wouldn't say it's running around with a socialist agenda. I mean, it's happy to sort of kill pensioners in their freezing cold homes.
It's a very mild agenda.
That's not very socialist, is it?
Centrist dad agenda, yeah.
Well, there we go. Well, there's the balance.
There you go.
In action. Thank you, Lisa. Right, let's move on. Another story doing the rounds. Families are set to be hit with the highest ever tax rates on flights abroad as holidays become more expensive. More front pages on the way in just a tick. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's a lot of fine weather to come across many of the usual holiday hotspots in southern Europe through the next few days. A different story across the southeast of Europe, though. Here's Storm Elena bringing some heavy rain, strong winds across parts of Greece into Cyprus and into Turkey as well. Elsewhere, though, like I said, lots of dry weather on offer, and with that, lots of sunshine too. So not looking too bad at all if you're heading across many parts of southern Europe through the next couple of days. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa entitled World Front for Combat Against Jews and Crusaders, and President George W. Bush talked of a crusade on terrorism. In 2010, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula sent a parcel bomb to New York. It was addressed to Reginald of Chatillon. The addressee had died at the hands of Saladin in 1187. Those facts suggest that the long history of struggle between Christendom and Islamic caliphates remains relevant, at least to some militant Islamists. That being the case, perhaps we should all understand the past. General Sir Simon Mayle, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff Operations, can be our teacher, particularly if we want to know in gory detail about battles to control Jerusalem, Constantinople, Vienna and the Eastern Mediterranean. His new book is called The House of War. It's an excellent read, which perhaps ought to figure in a national adult curriculum. And he joins me. But let's begin with the word crusade. What was it that drove Christians around Europe to want to cross to the Holy Land and seize Jerusalem?
Context and timing is really important to understand. It's been rather stereotyped as Christian aggression against peace-loving Muslims. The Islamic religion had burst out of the desert in the 7th century with the death of the Prophet Muhammad, and for the next nearly 400 years had Christianity, Christendom, the Christian states absolutely on the back foot. It took the Holy Land, destroyed the Persian Empire, took the North Africa, which was Christian at the time, including Egypt, of course, took Spain all the way into Tours, Charles Martel. 100 years after the death of the Prophet, it expanded in an extraordinary state.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. One more front page has just dropped hot off the press. It is the Sunday Times, and middle class support VAT on private schools, apparently. The Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, claims most families in good professional jobs have already been priced out. So there we go. Let's take one more look at the Mail on Sunday front page, the big story that we're talking about. Kemi Badenoch's chat with GB News bosses about, she claims that we're giving Too much airtime to her critics, let's say that. That's the big story in the Sunday Times tomorrow. Just talking about the row between Kemi and Reform, a Conservative Party spokesman told GB News yesterday Reform has delivered a Labour government that has cruelly cut winter fuel payments for 10 million pensioners, put the future of family farming and food security at risk, and launched a devastating raid on jobs, which will leave working people paying the price. A vote for Reform, the Tories say, this coming May is a vote for a Labour council. Only the Conservatives can stop this. That was the statement the Tories gave us yesterday. Should we go back to the Sunday Times very quickly, ladies? You spotted this story on the front. Lucy Worsley, the historian and TV presenter, has revealed, Linda, her anger that the murder of women is being glamorised for entertainment.
Yeah, and I must say that this has occurred to me when I've been watching output from several TV channels, is this glamorisation of violence against women and the murder of women is a real worry. I mean, especially when you pay attention to the Gisèle Pellicot trial in France.
Awful.
You know, that exposed that it wasn't just, well, I say just the 50 men. There were pockets of it, they suspect, all over France. And, you know, Lisa, we were saying that, in fact, the world hasn't become a safer place for women. It's become much more dangerous.
I think that is a fair point going into 2025. We would expect that perhaps women, you know, we've got this equality and whatever, but I actually think the world is much more dangerous towards women in 2025. There are some very anti-women anti-woman policies happening all over the world.
Aideen, what do you make of I'm not sure if you even know who they are, the likes of, say, Bonnie Blue and, what's her name, is it Lucy Phillips? These OnlyFans girls who are sleeping with...
numbers.
One of them did 100 men in one night. They're trying for 1,000. What do you make of that kind of stuff?
Well, it's
quite... Because, before you answer, I look at the men in that situation, in the video, and I am absolutely disgusted. These are, same with the Pellicot trial, these are, some of them, normal men with good jobs, they're married, they're lawyers, they're doctors, whoever, and I look at that, I just think, goodness me.
It's, so from a moral, from a personal point of view, I think it's really bad for their souls, men and women to be doing that, but should it be made illegal or anything like that? I'm not sure. I mean, is it a right of these women to do this? I suppose it is. If you're going to have complete freedom and sexual freedom. And it's a very strange society we live in, because on one hand we want equality and we want sexual freedom as women, but the other hand we want to be completely protected from men at the same time. So we want 2025 morals, but with Victorian restrictions. So there's a lot. We need to really think about our relationship with sex and the law.
Do you find that empowering, their behaviour?
I don't find it empowering at all, and I think
find it
possibly
dangerous.
there'd be damage for her. Like, you could equate it to a sports star. Let's say a male sports star. He uses his body for 10 years of his life in a very vigorous way, and he gets rewarded. So in the same way, a sex worker will do that, or an OnlyFans girl. The only problem is there's a huge reputational damage to that woman that is not equated. So,
and most of the time, you talked about a male athlete that spends 10 years of his life using his body, and a prostitute might use the same 10 years using her body. But the big possibility is the prostitute has been driven into that way of life. Most prostitutes do not choose to go out on the streets.
Most don't. My sister works with sex workers in Ireland, so some of them have been trafficked from countries. She meets women with like literally scars from ankle chains on their legs.
Really?
But some of them are earning €400 an hour. So, and there's a whole gamut, and we can't just think of it. It's something that needs a huge amount of discussion and our morality. But it's true, they say it's a great shame for the women to do OnlyFans. It's so embarrassing for the men. They're paying for this.
This looks worse in some respects.
Well, make it legal if all the men have to go public on who they're supporting.
But I think this is what I think Lucy Worsley is sort of making a point, which is what interested us, is that this, just the way that women are not are feeling like it's not as safe to be a woman now. And it shows on television, on, the way that they show women, the way that they portray sort of violence towards women.
Like, it's a creepy fascination of Jack the Ripper, and it's all quite glamorised. Can you imagine if they were doing that with murderers, like the Pellicot case?
Yeah.
Where you have...
They made them.
Lucy Worsley in the Sunday Telegraph tomorrow, she says, I'm fed up with seeing women running naked through woods with the killer in pursuit. On television. She just says there's far too much of it being glamorised.
Yeah, absolutely.
OK, let's move on to one more story. The family holidays apparently are set to get even more expensive as Labour increased airfare levies, another tax hike. A family of 4 travelling to a destination such as Walt Disney Florida could see their levies surging to over £400 per holiday following the tax raid. Oh, do we need this? Is this... I mean...
I don't know.
No, we don't need it. I know the answer to that already. We don't need it. Why are they so obsessed with just fleecing everybody? Do you think
but at the end of the day, you know, there's no money tree that you can go and shake at the end of the garden. Obviously. So I think that we need to accept that some taxes need to rise. Now, there's no aviation, there's no avgas fuel, no aviation petrol tax, and there are other taxes that don't apply in the airline industry. So maybe these taxes do have to rise. Maybe the average family of four can't take their kids to Disneyland. Maybe they need to go to Blackpool and buy a bag of chips and suck on a stick of rock.
If you've been on a British, or been on a transport, the trains recently, you'll know it's about 200 quid.
Well, get in the car, get in the family car and go and drive and have a bucket and spade holiday.
Do you think they want people to fly anymore? I don't think they want people. I don't think they want the peasants.
They don't want people
anymore.
to drive. They don't want you to fly. They don't want you to get on a train.
Yeah, they just want you to stay in your little box and vote for them. But it's, I think, all this tax. It's all shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. They should simplify the tax code. The tax code in England is longer than the Bible, and we know you're so true. I mean, there's no little leprechaun going to give us the money, unfortunately, with this little pot of gold.
Even in Ireland.
Even in Ireland, I know. I believed it for so long.
The Irish have done quite well, actually, with this sort of tech industry. They've had some money trees over there.
Yeah, don't talk about that now. And sleep.
I just don't think they want people to fly. Call me a conspiracy theorist. I don't care. I just think there's an agenda for low carbon future. They don't want people to enjoy themselves. You'll own nothing and be happy, apparently. Right, coming up next, it's Headliners, presented tonight by Josh Howie. Josh, what have you got in store for our lovely viewers? Oh, sorry,
So
Stephen Allen.
close.
It said Josh. I'm sorry, Stephen.
We bald men all look the same. You don't-
Sorry.
That's what's happening there. Unbelievable. Well, Josh is on the show. Also, Nick Dixon will be here. I'll be guiding us through, and we'll be talking about 2025. The results are already in. There's a survey, and we are not particularly positive about it. Civil servants are going on strike. How will we notice? You won't, because they don't work in the actual place. You'll have to go around to where they live to work out if they're on a picket line or not. And Donald Trump is pro-TikTok. Is it because he's got loads of followers? Is it because he's good at doing the dances? We will find out and make sense of all of that after 11 o'clock tonight.
Great, look forward to it. Thanks, Stephen. Have we got time very quickly for this UFO clip? Yes, let's play it. There we go. Apparently in the US, there's been UFO sightings all around the world. Let's take a quick look.
Hey, what the is
and
that?
they're in sync with each other.
Do you believe in aliens? That video was in New York City. They saw floating lights in the sky. And I have to say, Linda, this has been happening all over the world, sightings and orbs and so on.
Spooky.
Do you believe life out there?
I definitely believe there's life out there. I'm not sure if I believe that that's a flying saucer.
Probably Elon Musk doing something.
I'm a massive believer in aliens. Maybe not little green men that come down, but I think, isn't it mathematically impossible there's not life elsewhere in the universe?
It scares me.
There has to be something.
To not believe in aliens.
It scares me. It's too big, space.
But they don't believe in me. Nobody's come to me, you know?
Yeah, OK.
Funny aliens are out there just saying...
I think they're there. I think they walk amongst us. In fact, I think you get aliens. Anyway, I'm gonna get clipped up and be cancelled probably, and put in the David Icke bin. Thank you for your views at home and your company this evening. It's been a great panel. Thank you. Really appreciated having you. Have a nice Saturday night. See you soon.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, as we see out 2024, the weather certainly turning much more unsettled across the country. As we approach New Year itself, potentially be very windy for some of us. But before we get there, we still have this area of high pressure hanging on across the south, so maintaining the rather murky conditions here. But this cold front will continue to sink its way southwards, introducing something a little bit clearer. But for most of England and Wales, it is going to be another murky night. If you do have any travel plans, do allow some extra time for your journeys. Further north, we have this band of rain across Scotland that will be fairly heavy and persistent in places. And for most of us, it's not going to be a cold night by any means. Temperatures not much lower than about 3 to 5 degrees. So we start Sunday off on a fairly wet note for Scotland, especially for Western Scotland. Some heavy and persistent rain here, accompanied by a fairly keen breeze as well. Maybe a few glimmers of sunshine for Northern Ireland, but especially so for Northern England. Some brightness here from the word go. North Wales also seeing some sunshine, but further south across the rest of England and Wales, it's going to be another fairly murky start to the day with, again, some mist and fog around. But I'm hopeful as we go through the course of Sunday that will begin to lift and break and more of us seeing some brighter skies. But unfortunately for Scotland, that rain continuing to pile in and starting to turn a little bit colder across the very far north. So some of that rain could well turn to snow, especially across the high ground. But with more in the way of brightness further south, feeling a little bit less cold, could see highs reaching 10 to 11 degrees. Then looking ahead to Monday, further rain and also some snow for Scotland. Warnings are in force here, so some very tricky conditions as we go through the course of the day. A little bit quieter further south with some brightness, but as we approach the all-important New Year period, all of us seeing some unsettled weather, but especially so across the north where it could turn very windy for a time.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize ever, an incredible £50,000. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion? For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost